So, Tom, where are you from? What was early childhood like for you?
Oh, dude, here we go. I mean, it was for me. I grew up in a single parent household. My dad, it was just me and my dad. Grew up in Pennsylvania, just north of Pittsburgh, this little town that nobody knows of, Newcastle, Pennsylvania. Real shithole. It was, it was just me and him. And my mom left when I was 2 years old with my sister, who was 1. I don't remember this, of course. I was only 2 years old, but my dad picks me up from daycare in Pennsylvania. And at this time, we were living in an apartment complex and get home. And my mom and sister, I guess, were gone, and left. My mom had left a note saying, "Hey, I'm going to Arizona to my parents' house, and I'll see you when I see you," type thing. And I never met my mom or sister from that point until I was about 12, 13 years old. So it was just me and my dad, forever. And basically, I always say this, he did as best he could with what he had, So I remember going out and visiting them at, a young age, and my mom just looked like absolute hell. I remember it. And listen, nothing against people that grow up in trailer parks. I get it. Like, it's low income, you do what you can to get by. But I remember my mom coming out on the front porch. I've never met her. She had this long, probably XXX t-shirt on, hair just whatever, just looked gross.
Yeah.
Teeth were missing. Just the typical, this is my mom, And I'm like, well, all right, here we are, make the best of it, I guess, And I remember, so she lived across the street from my grandparents on her side. And I remember her and her deadbeat boyfriend lived across the street from the grandparents. So you got my mom's parents lives here. My mom and her deadbeat boyfriend live here. My sister just kind of schleps back and forth, right? And I remember walking into my mom's place and just seeing Budweiser cans laying everywhere. It just looked like an absolute dump.
Yeah. And
I remember them taking us to Arby's in a Corvette. It was in the middle of summer in Arizona, with the top down, and I'm not kidding you. I bet you it was 115 degrees. I just remember baking and going through the Arby's drive-through, getting curly fries, and the deadbeat boyfriend drinking beer while
cruising
around, And so anyways, we end up leaving, me and my dad, and, my dad purely did it so I can meet my sister, right? Fast forward 4 years later, my sister comes and spends a few weeks with us, because my dad, at that point, she probably would have been 15. Wanted to give her the opportunity. Hey, look, I know I've never been a part of your life, me or your brother, but why don't you come spend a few weeks with us and then you decide what you want to do, right? And she did. She came, and I remember that it was fine, but she ended up going back to our moms. And hindsight being 2020, I understand why, even though the life that we could have provided for her would have been far superior than the one that she received. It was where she was comfortable.
Yeah.
It's what she knew. Her friends were there, even though it was drugs were everywhere. The lifestyle was far less than ideal. That's what she chose. So yeah, it was me and my dad pretty much. And I remember getting my driver's license, 16 years old. And my dad said, basically, I don't give a shit what you do. Just don't kill yourself and go have fun, be home by dinner time.
So your father gave you a lot of freedom.
Oh yeah. He had to, though. It was just him and I, and where we grew up, it's the middle of nowhere. Legit. There wasn't really, I remember when we got a Walmart, and that was whoa, we got a Walmart now.
We're on the map.
Yeah, we're making it, So he didn't have a choice. You know, he had to go to work. He was it's blue collar town. You know, he was a mechanic, auto mechanic, worked on cars, you know, his whole entire life. You know, I remember on Saturdays, he'd take me to work with him and I'd sit in the showroom, you know, and eat Cheerios and watch the tube television. And he's in there, you know, wrenching on cars. So when I got my license, he probably was like, thank God, you know, like I got some freedom now.
Yeah.
Just go do your thing.
And he's a single parent too. This whole time he's watching you 100% of the time.
Yeah.
He was ready to get you out.
Yeah. And I wasn't a bad kid.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I wanted my freedom and he was willing to give it to me, you know? So it was a totally fine experience. I started at probably the age of 12, 13 years old, dabbling in drinking, right? My first drink ever was Zima, you know, and that was, I remember distinctly sitting around a kitchen table. My buddy took it from his mom out of the fridge and we all passed it around and we're like, oh, this is cool, you know, going into the woods and smoking hollow sticks, you know, everything that kids do. Mm. But then it started to kind of pick up a little bit and it became, you know, I get my license and I always hung with a little bit older kids, right? If I'm 16, I'm hanging out with 18, 19-year-olds, you know, and they're drinking on the weekends. Very small town, right? Everybody knows everybody. And there was always this one house that everybody went to on the weekends and we just went there and partied, you know, and drank. And it progressed. I don't know if you want me to go through my whole story.
No. So how long? So look, I can relate to that. It's on the weekends. Yeah. It's maybe a night during the week. When did it progress then to the point where it was like every day you started drinking and it was like drinking before school? And, you know, were you dabbling with drugs as well? This show is sponsored by Open Recovery Addiction Help. Whether you're newly sober, in long-term sobriety, or even maybe looking to make a change in your life, Open Recovery offers 24/7 support right from your phone. It's anonymous and packed with tools to help you stay connected, stay accountable, and build the life you deserve. Download the Open Recovery Addiction Help app today and take the next step in your recovery journey.
So pot was always kind of like, I'll do it. You know, but I never liked it. Mm-hmm. Drinking was my primary drug of choice.
Yep.
It was always my primary thing. When I was in high school, I was drinking a solid 3, 4, 5 days a week, you know, depending. Mm-hmm. It was nothing for us on a Tuesday night. We'd all jump in our mud trucks and have a keg of beer strapped on the back and go ride mud, you know, and just party. We were, you know, which still to this day, I don't see anything wrong with. It's fine. Go ahead and do it, you know? And I know guys that do it to this day successfully. You know, we're in Palm Beach County. We're right by Okeechobee. They have Mud Fest and people can do that. And it's cool. And in fact, I would do it still to this day if I could do it successfully. But I quickly realized that I didn't have the capabilities of shutting it off like other people did, you know? And if it's 2:00 in the morning, one of two things was happening. Either I was continuing to drink by myself or I was blacked out, passed out somewhere. Mm. There was no in the middle. There was no like, oh boy, I better get home. Yeah. That didn't exist, you know? And if I was at home, I don't remember how I got there. So that was kind of that started probably around like 17, 18 years old. And I remember my 21st birthday, dude, look, everybody's like, ooh, 21, I can drink legally. To me, that was no big deal. I had already drank at the bar, you know, that one bar that most people drank at, which was Tony's Lounge. Everybody went there. I was drinking there at 18 years old, you know, so big deal, 21. Now I can go and buy beer. Woohoo, you know?
Did you start noticing other people around you that you were drinking differently than everyone else around you?
My friends group always changed. My friends group changed contingent on the amount that they drank. So the people that I was hanging out with at 15, 16 years old changed when I was 18, 19, 20. I was always surrounding myself with people that drank just a little bit more than me or equal, So I always had something. And towards the end of my drinking, I remember sitting in Tony's lounge. At the time, I'm probably 25 years old. And there's this guy sitting in there, and it was always the same people, right? And he looks at me and he says, Tom, what are you doing? And me, I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, it's 2:00 in the afternoon on a Thursday or Tuesday or whatever day he said. And you're here. Why aren't you working? And me, I'm like, why aren't you working? Like, F you, dude, And that was one of the first times that I actually somewhat looked at myself and I'm like, damn. And he looked at me and he said, look, he's like, I lived by myself. I worked my whole entire life, construction. That's what everybody did up there. I'm totally fine coming here every single day drinking. I know I'm going to die a drunk and I'm totally fine with it. You're 25, 24 years old. You got your whole life ahead of you and you're sitting here with me. And I'm like, at the time, I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm not drinking tomorrow because I got stuff to do tomorrow,
right.
Making up those excuses. But that's the example of where my mind went, because shortly after that, I'm like, well, he's calling me out on my shit, so I'm not going to sit with him. I'll sit with Keith over here. And Keith was the town drunk. And he was the guy that would put a mousetrap. He would, I feel bad for him, but he would legit do anything for a bottle of the cheapest vodka that you could get. To the tune of, he would put his in a rat trap and he was like everybody used him as the jokester, and he was a drunk. He was a drunk and he would do anything for booze. So we kind of made him our puppet show. But then I find myself hanging out with this dude. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm being associated with this guy, right? So
when you graduated high school, right? Just to jump back a little bit. After high school, what did you end up doing work-wise that afforded you the ability to
mechanic?
Okay.
I got involved in the car business at a young age, at 12 years old, 13 years old. I started working at this car dealership, Preston Motors, phenomenal company. And they're a big part of why I'm sober today. And I can get into it. But my dad worked there for the better part of 30 years as a mechanic. And so when I was old enough to work at all, I started off as a lot kid, just washing cars, detailing cars, whatever. In the wintertime, shoveling off snow, off cars, all that stuff. And then my senior year of high school, the owner, Bob Preston, phenomenal guy, approached me and said, hey, I'll put you through school. Do you want to be a mechanic? And I'm like, sure, I guess. So he put me through school. I went to technical school to work on General Motors, following in my dad's footsteps, right? And so that's what I did. I ended up going to school. I commuted to and from pretty much downtown Pittsburgh for 2 years. Did the schooling, became certified GM technician, and then went right into the work field. I worked simultaneously. But the funny thing is that I was a mechanic for a period of time, but I could no longer be a mechanic anymore because every time I would test drive a car, the car would smell like beer. And they came to me and they said, Tom, the customers are complaining that their cars smell like booze after you're done working on them. And I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know why they think that, that sort of stuff. So then they moved me over to sales, and they're like, you'll fit right in here, you know? So I'm just selling cars and, you know, drinking while I'm working, and all the other salesmen are blowing duster in the bathroom. And I was like at home, you know? So that's what I did pretty much until I got sober, was mechanic, auto, sales, you know, in that world, you know, for the better part of 14 years.
At what age did you get sober?
26.
26. What was it like 25 to 26, the last year of your drinking?
From what I can remember, it was pretty much a complete blackout. I mean, because at that time you asked if I had ever gotten involved in drugs. I remember saying, oh, I'll never do drugs, you know? Well, cocaine, you know, was something that, you know, my buddy had it and I knew they did it. And I never had any issues doing it. But one night I remember it was a Steelers Sunday. The Steelers were playing a Sunday night game. We're all in his basement. And he had this little room in the back. And I knew what they were doing, coming in and out. And I was so drunk. And I'm like, let me try that. And I'm like, I remember it gives me chills, like walking in, not knowing what to do. And I did my first line of cocaine. And then I'm like, that was fun. There was a bottle of Southern Comfort on the refrigerator, on top of the refrigerator. By that time, I had drank all my beer just about. I was out of booze. And I'm like, hey, can I have some of that Southern Comfort up there? And then just started drinking Southern Comfort. And it really amplified my drinking, you know? And I remember having to go to work the next day and just like thinking to myself, why'd I do that? But I want to do it again, you know? And so simultaneously, kind of in that same period of time, I remember starting to suffer the withdrawals, you know, the physical withdrawals, the shakes, not eating, the mental obsession, I'm just thinking about it all the time.
How long did you have to stop drinking for until the physical withdrawal kind of kicked in? Well,
I was never, there was only a few occasions where I actually drank in the morning, right? And those were generally on the weekends. But what I did was, and this is before I realized what I was suffering was alcohol withdrawals, I went to a regular doctor. I'm like, dude, I don't feel right. I feel kind of off, you know? Some would say maybe I feel anxious. And he's like, well, you know, ask me all the questions. How much you drink? I don't know, a few beers here and there. You know, meanwhile, I'm drinking a case of beer a day, you know, on top of whatever else I'm doing. But I don't tell them that, of course. And so he gives me a script for Ativan. So Benzos, benzodiazepines. And I never knew. I didn't know at the time what those really did, but I quickly found out that like these kind of help kind of tamper down the withdrawals. So the only reason I didn't drink in the mornings and during the day was, one, I had to work. And two, I had the benzos. Knowing what I know now, they affect the brain the same exact way. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up being on benzodiazepines and made a relationship with a female that was a nurse that could supply me with as much Xanax as I wanted. So as long as I would supply her with my dad's opiates. Because in this timeline, my dad got extremely sick when I was 21. It almost killed him. And so he's been prescribed opiates the better part of 25 years at this point. But we would just do friendly exchanges. You know, hey, I'll give you some of my dad's opiates. You give me a bag full of Xanax. And so that's how I maintained. That's why the last year was a complete blackout, because I was taking Xanax during the day, drinking at night, doing cocaine at night, waking up wherever I woke up, rinse and repeat, go to work. And that's what I did for probably the last year, maybe even 2.
Now, during this time, during your drinking, had you ever been to any inpatient treatment facilities, meetings, anything like that?
No, there was a guy, his name was Cricket. He was one of the salesmen at where I worked. I know his real name, but I won't say it. But his name was Cricket. And I remember probably, 23, 24 years old. He came up and handed me a book. And it said Alcoholics Anonymous on the front of it. I'm like, what the fuck is this for? And he's like, I feel like you might need this. And he's like, I don't use it anymore. Because he drank. I drank with him. I drank across the street at Benzos, on Monday nights for 10-cent wings and quarter drafts or vice versa. He's like, I don't need this book anymore. He was one of those guys that just gave up on AA, but he gave it to me. And I'm like, I don't, whatever. Appreciate it. And I remember taking it home and throwing it in my bottom drawer of my dresser. And coming home every so months, right, in a drunken stupor and pulling this book out and like one eye in it, trying to read and praying simultaneously and then opening up my window in the middle of December when it's like 0 degrees because I'm spinning. I'm hot, but it's the middle of winter. That was my only experience to Alcoholics Anonymous. And it wasn't even an experience. It was just I feel like you might need this one day. And I never picked it up ever sober until I went to treatment September of 2010.
So you go to, how did you end up in treatment?
Yeah. So the last 3 weeks of my drinking / drugging, I got I totaled my car. I was driving home from not Tony's Lounge this time. I was driving home from Fat and Skinny's and I totaled my car, but not enough to where I couldn't get my car home. I got my car home. And, my dad and Preston Motors at the time being the good enablers that they were, even though they knew what I was doing, I called my dad up and I said, Dad, I hit a deer last night. Mind you, I've wrecked every car I've ever owned, right? I hit a deer last night and I don't know what to do. So Preston sends a car, a flatbed. They pick my car up at my house. I get in the flatbed in my work clothes from the day before and go to Preston's and go to work like nothing ever happened, And I had blood because when I wrecked my car, I smashed my face up against the steering wheel. Airbags were out, everything. Well, those dumbasses gave me a rental car. The dealership. They said, here, just drive this until we figure out what we're going to do with your car. 1 week later to the day, I was at the same bar doing the same thing, left 2:00 in the morning, and I'm driving home and I saw the lights. Probably 2:00 in the morning, and I received a DUI. Felony DUI. A kid that I went to high school with, in fact, was the one that arrested me. And I remember having a pocket full of Xanax, took him because I didn't want to get a possession charge. All the stories, we hear these all the time. But I remember sitting in the back of the cop car in handcuffs and like, you know what I mean? Like that. This is coming to an end and I cannot fucking wait. You know what I mean? Like that. I can't keep up. I can't keep doing this. So they didn't take me to jail. They took me to the hospital. Because in Pennsylvania, and I believe it's just about anywhere, you blow over a 0.26, you go to the hospital because you could die from alcohol overdose or whatever, which I never came close to. The average person would have. But when they gave me my DUI, I blew a 0.37. So they took me to the hospital. It's probably 3:00 in the morning. The cops call my dad. He comes to the hospital, picks me up, wham, cracks me in the back of the head. You fucking idiot. Blah, blah, blah. And then I had to be at work then in 4 hours. And he made me go. And he's like, you're going to work. Now, mind you, the DUI that I just got was in Preston's rental car. It's a small town and it says Preston Auto Group real big on the back of the car. So I go home. I got a few hours, by the time I get picked up from the hospital to the time I have to be back at the shop to work on cars, And I go home and I shower, brush my teeth, whatever. And he takes me to the shop and just drops me off. And he's like, I don't give a shit how you deal with this, but you're going to deal with it. And Dell's Auto, they were the ones, they were the tow company, right? Call up Preston, say, we got one of your cars here. The driver got a DUI last night. And they approached me and I told them, I said, I did, And they were like, we don't know what we're going to do with you, but just keep coming to work. And then 1 week from there, it would have been probably a Thursday or a Friday. I didn't go to work and I was drinking still at the same bar. And my dad called me and said, you're done. That's it. I don't know what you're going to do, but you no longer have a place to work. You no longer have a place to live either. He's like, you're out of my control. And he's like, get your ass home. So I went home and I remember him in the living room, half in tears, but half like ready to beat the shit out of me type thing. And he was like, I got basically a lifeline for you. He's like, you're not going to stay here, but you can go to treatment. I'm like, what is that even? And I'm like, I don't even really have a problem.
Oh God.
You know what I mean? He's like, you can go to treatment in this place in Florida, in Jacksonville. And the flight leaves in, I think it was 3 hours. That's the story I've told this whole time. It's somewhere in there. It was very quick, I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, I'll take you to the airport. And I'm kind of like, okay.
Let's go to Jacksonville.
Let's go. Take me to the airport. And I packed a duffel bag and I went. And I remember him dropping me off at the airport. I'm 26 years old, standing at the gate, bawling. Cause I didn't know like where my life was heading at this time. And I was like a mess, And I had flown like a couple of times. I was a complete bitch about flying, and I am still to this day. I hate flying. I don't enjoy it at all. And I remember getting on that airplane and just in tears, sobbing. And that's where like legit everything changed.
Really quick, just to back up for a second, you had said you got a felony DUI.
Yeah.
You had taken the Xanax, so they didn't find any Xanax in there. How did you get a felony DUI? Because your blood alcohol levels.
I was charged with, I was charged with, and this is fruits of sobriety. I told them. So I got the DUI, and a week later, I'm in Jacksonville, Florida for treatment. They didn't even have enough time in the court systems to kind of, set trial dates and all that stuff. And let's call it what it is. A DUI is a DUI. Like, they're bad. Don't get me wrong. And I should have never been driving.
Could have taken someone's life.
Could have killed somebody. Could have killed myself.
Uh-huh.
But in the grand scope of things, in terms of, it's a DUI, right? Mm-hmm. So I remember calling the courthouse and telling them, look, I'm in Florida. I know I got a DUI. I know that you have like a bench warrant for me. I said, but I'm honestly, I'm doing good. And I was probably in Florida at this point in time, probably a month, you know? And they told me, they said, look, just do your thing. The charges aren't going away, but you don't have to rush back here. You know, I gave them the documentation, you know, my therapist and all that stuff.
Yeah, so they knew
what was up. And I never went back to Pennsylvania until I had 10 or 11 months of sobriety under my belt. And I walked into that courthouse. I never once hired an attorney. So when I have conversations with people that are like, oh, you should get an attorney, you should do this, or I should get an attorney, I should do this, I should do that. My response to him is the only thing that you should do is stay sober. Whether you get an attorney or not, sure, if you want to, go ahead. But what's really going to help you in this is you staying sober. See, a lot of times people hire attorneys because they're like, I don't want to deal with the consequences. But getting the DUI for me wasn't a consequence as so much as it was an opportunity. You know what I mean? Like it was something that most people look at DUIs or overdoses or failed relationships or fill in the blank as consequences. And yes, on a surface level they are, but if you frame them as an opportunity and you utilize them as an opportunity, it's going to send you on a completely different trajectory on your life. And I quickly found that out. When I walked into that courtroom, no attorney, no nothing. And I said, look, I got 10 months sober now. I flew out this morning. I'm here. I do have a return flight to go back to Palm Beach County this afternoon. If you want me to stay in Pennsylvania, I'd be happy to do so. I really don't want to, but I'll do it. And I remember the judge looking at me and she says, it would serve us no purpose to keep you here. If you have and I don't get me wrong, I had all the documentation to prove it.
Yeah, your facilities,
all that
the whole
stuff,
nine, yeah.
Letters of recommendation, you know, from people. She said, you can go back to Florida. And she's like, obviously you're going to be on 6 months of probation. You got to pay your fines. And you can't drive. I'm taking your driver's license for 6 months. And I'm like, okay, about the driver's license. I said, because, you know, about 4 months ago, I got my driver's license in Florida. See, because at the time, the DUI, they never, either they didn't communicate or what.
Well, you weren't convicted either, right?
And I technically wasn't convicted.
Yeah.
And she looks at me, she says, look, I don't give a shit what you do in Florida. Just don't drive here. And I'm like, sounds good. And I boarded that flight that afternoon and came back to Florida and paid the fines, did the probation, and I didn't have any issue. They could have put me on probation for 25 years. You know, I still to this day, almost 15 years later, I would be calling into probation if I had to. You know what I mean? Probation wasn't a big deal for me.
The first 10 or 11 months that you were sober before you went back to deal with the DUI, were you in a controlled living environment that entire time? Okay, so do you actually recommend that for someone who's newly sober or looking to get sober?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer you are who you surround yourself with, right? We all hear that, you know. It's somewhat controversial, but not really. If we decide to split hairs, it can be controversial, but I think that the community and the people that we hang around with is probably superior than working the 12 steps. I truly believe that. And I've oftentimes referenced this on our podcast. And I say, if you have somebody that works the 12 steps, but they have no friends, they don't talk to people, they don't build community, they don't network, but they work the 12 steps, great. You have somebody that doesn't work the 12 steps, but they hang around sober people all the time. They're continually trying to improve on their lives through, maybe it's not the 12 steps or whatever. They go to events, they hang out with sober people, they stay in the center of sobriety. I think that person is going to have a better shot at sobriety than the person that works the 12 steps. But then I was challenged, and this makes all the sense in the world to me. Eric and Ben, who are both big 12-step guys, and I am too, but they're like really big 12-step guys. They said, but you can't work the 12 steps unless you take somebody through the steps. So it kind of forces you into that community aspect of it. And I'm like, you're right. You know? So, but going back to what you asked, so I did treatment in Jacksonville for 45 days. Took a flight from Jacksonville to Palm Beach County, and I did an intensive outpatient program for probably 90 days, give or take. Mm-hmm. And this whole time I'm in sober living.
Yeah. So you go back, you deal with the DUI, you then go to Palm Beach County. Now
I went to Palm Beach County at 45 days sober.
Oh, okay. So you were in Jacksonville to like inpatient, then you did like a controlled living, sober environment in Palm Beach County.
In Palm Beach County.
So when you went back after your DUI, when did you move out of sober living and you were kind of just in the free world?
Probably about, well, I'm going to say a year and a half.
Okay.
Because then I moved into like a 3/4 house, but some people may not know what those are because they're no longer a thing anymore. But back then, you know, we're talking almost 15 years ago, we had these things called 3/4 way houses.
Step down.
Yeah, step down. But realistically, it was just like, it was kind of your own place.
Yeah, of course.
And so I did that. I moved into like a 3/4 way house around a year and a half, somewhere in there. That's when I got my first job in treatment.
What did your program look like and consist of when you went into that 3/4 living? When you had a little more freedom?
Oh, program.
Yeah. Like, what did you do to stay sober once you had a little more freedom and you moved out of the full-time halfway house?
I continued to go to meetings every day. Mind you, I didn't have any kids. I wasn't married. I had no responsibilities outside of working and staying sober. So I went to meetings every day, continued to work the steps. I took some guys through the steps, not near as many as I should have. Just stayed in the center. You know, I constantly surrounded myself with people that were sober, but like quality sobriety, not the dipshits that were still going down to Clematis at, you know, sneaking out at 11 o'clock at night and going to the clubs and just not like, I never spent time with those people. I always, just like how I was drinking and I drank with people that were a little bit older than me. That's the same thing I did with sobriety. I started spending time with people that had more sober time than me and had more sobriety wisdom than me. Mm. And I constantly hung around those people. And I firmly believe that's why I am where I am today. Mm. I believe that's why we made this connection today.
Of course.
You know what I mean? Like,
have you reconnected with your mom?
No, my mom passed away.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So that, and just to prepare you, I will start crying here. What's this go back? 3 years, probably 3 years ago. My mom was an absolute piece of shit. And I'm not ashamed to say it. Like, I have no positive things to say about her other than she had sex with my dad and brought me onto this planet. That's it. Hard stop. Nothing good to say about her. Some may say I'm harboring a resentment towards her, and maybe I am, but I don't fucking care. She put my sister through hell. And I'm not going to say what she put my sister through, but you could imagine, right? 3 years ago, married, 3 kids. I wake up in the middle of the night, like sweating, like anxiety again, you know? And I'm like, what the hell is this all about? And I couldn't stop thinking about my sister, who's a year younger than me. And her name's Tammy. So I'm Tommy and she's Tammy, right? And I start scouring the internet. I'm trying to figure out who she is, you know, or where she's at and stuff like that. Then I come across peoplefinder.com. And of course, after me bumble fucking around the internet for 4 hours, I come across peoplefinder.com and they find her in 10 minutes. I just had to pay $10 to join some sort of membership, you know? So I ended up finding a lot out about her. I found her on Facebook. Because mind you, she had gotten married at some point throughout this time. I find her on Facebook and I'm sending her messages on Facebook. Hey, blah, blah, blah. Never responds, you know? And probably 6 months go by and I'm just like, you know what? Whatever. Screw her, you know? I get a message from this random person on Facebook. So Ben and I, we have a treatment center called Rock Recovery Center. And on our Rock Recovery Center Facebook page, I get this message from this lady and says, hey, I have a friend of mine that is in serious need of help. And I feel like you may know her. And I'm like, what? And then, like, I just knew it was her. I knew it had to be about my sister for whatever reason, God thing, you know? Turns out it was. And I end up getting on the phone with this girl. Her name's Rachel. She grew up with my sister, connected with me, told me everything about my sister that I never knew. I never knew any of this stuff about my sister. Told me the things my mom did, the life that my sister had to live, you know? And at that point, I'm like, I'll do whatever I have to do to get her help, you know? Still dropping her messages on Facebook, right? And then she finally answered. She messages me back and it started off like really weird, you know? Like I'm talking to my sister via Facebook Messenger. And we finally end up connecting on the phone. And I remember I tell my wife, I'm literally about to talk to Tammy for the first time. And I get in my car and I'm just driving, you know? And I have the number in my phone ready to call. And I couldn't like actually do it, you know? And then, so I pulled in Target parking lot and I just called and we were on the phone for like 2 hours and she told me everything. And at that point, I'm like, Tammy, I don't know what I can do for you, but I'm going to figure something out. And Ben and I, being connected in the treatment industry for as long as we have been, called a dear friend of mine, Josh Gamatoni. Him and I got sober together. And I said, Josh, I don't know. I didn't want to bring her to my treatment center. That would be weird, you know? So he's like, I'll figure it out. Long story short, I get her a full scholarship to a treatment center down here in South Florida. She bought her flight. Thankfully, it was right around tax season. She had the money and she came. She came down. I got her a full scholarship at Banyan Treatment Centers.
Great facility.
Yep. And I remember going there. I haven't seen her in 25 years, call it. And I'm driving down to see my sister for the first time. And I get out and I talked to her on the phone as I'm on my way down. And I'm like, you hungry? She's like, yeah. So I stopped at this like Mexican thing, get a couple burritos and stuff. And she came out. She walked out. I was there. And we just locked arms for, I don't know, 10 minutes, probably, you know? All the texts, everybody's like, woo, cheering, you know? And I'm like, wow. It's going to be hard to edit.
No, we're not going to edit it. You're good, dude.
She was like, she looked like crap, you know, as expected. You know, you got 30 years of hard running, you know, and it was a family reunion, dude, is what it was, you know, just me and her. And I stayed there for probably 2 hours. They put us in this room and we just talked. And I wish I could say that it was a happy ending, you know, but she ended up leaving. She left. She did the 45 days there. And then I got her another kind of scholarship at this place called Wayside House. It's an all-female program, very trauma intensive, you know, and I had her set up to go there. And she has 2 kids, and she just couldn't bear not being with her kids anymore. And so she ended up leaving. She went back to Arizona. But about a year and a half ago, I get a call, random number from Arizona. And I'm like, I know this has something to do with my sister, you know? It was a therapist at a treatment center in Arizona. And they said, hey, we have your sister here. And you're the only one that she signed a release for. I'm like, that's awesome. Let me talk to her, you know? And so we've stayed in contact she just celebrated 1 year clean. February.
Dude.
You need these?
Holy shit, man.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah, she celebrated 1 year clean on February 18th.
Oh my God. She's sober and clean today.
Yep.
Oh man.
And you know what got her to finally stop? When people say that, you know, you're going to end up in jails, institutions, or death, for her, it was jail. For the umpteenth time, you know, she got picked up again. Spent a month in jail, and she somehow got into an all-female. She did a month in jail, got into an all-female program out there. And we've stayed in contact ever since. As a matter of fact, I got to call her because I told her I'd call her and I never did. Sorry. I'll call you. But she FaceTimed with my children, you know, for the first time. My wife, my 3 kids.
Wow.
She looks just like me. You put long hair on me, there's my sister, you know? And it's just fruits of sobriety, man. It really is.
It's amazing. You guys were pulled apart at 1 and 2 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And then she had also the opportunity to spend, you know, to live with dad. But I understand she had her friends back in Arizona. She had her whole life there. Mm-hmm. And when you're a young teen, you want to be in a comfortable environment that you know. So here you guys are 40, 41, 42-ish, and you guys are all together now, clean and sober.
Yeah.
And she is now building a relationship with your kids.
Yeah. And she has her own apartment out there, you know. I would love more than just to move her here, you know, but one step at a time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like I would do anything for her.
Yeah.
But I also understand that, like, I don't want to be the guy to come like with the cape on and just save the day.
You can't.
This is her process, you know? But man, like, if you were to look at my upbringing compared to hers, you would think she doesn't stand a chance. And we see this. If I compare my upbringing compared to a lot of the people that I interact with on a daily basis, I had it so good.
Yeah.
You know, I really did. I didn't endure a lot of the things that some people endure. But it just goes to show the power of community, the power of therapy, just work. None of this is given to us. That's for sure. You know, it's not. A lot of work has been put in for myself, my sister, Ben, any other guests that you've had on here that have similar stories. The work is the work. You can't bypass it.
No, you're absolutely right. It is hard work, but in the beginning, all you have to do is just make that decision.
Yeah.
And the work is manageable. Once you get sober and clean and you start that journey, yes, it's hard work. Yes, it is a lot of work, but it's manageable. You can do it sober. It's very achievable.
Oh, yeah. And when I say work, it's not like, you know, we're going, you know, it's emotional work.
Looking at yourself.
It's looking at yourself, which is for some people one of the hardest things that one has to do. Mm-hmm. Looking at what makes me who I am, you know, and in my sister's situation, having to reflect and look at all that stuff. No thanks. Like, she's so much stronger than I am, you know, like the worst thing my dad ever did to me, ever, was say, go have fun. When you wreck that car, I'll buy you a new one. And when you wreck that car, I'll buy you a new one. And when you get in this trouble, I'll get you out of it. Now, don't get me wrong. Knowing what I know now, that's terrible. He enabled the shit out of me. But if we're comparing upbringings, I don't know how she did it. Yeah. You know, she's got the Conrad blood in her, I guess.
Is your father still around?
He is. That's another cool situation, you know, June 3. Wait, what's today?
4th. Yesterday was the 3rd.
In 10 days, it'll be 3 years. I walked in on my dad who had a stroke. Found him. He had moved down to Florida, call it 6 years ago, something. Because at this point, his grandkids are down here, you know. He came down and I got him set up in this little apartment. And, you know, without going into extreme details, I was getting ready to go down to the Florida Keys on this men's fishing trip that we do every year. And it was June 14th. We were getting ready to head out on the 15th. And I called him, hey, let's go grab dinner, blah, blah, blah. Because I'm not going to see you for probably the next week. I'm going on this trip, you know, just whatever. But he didn't answer the phone, which wasn't totally out of the ordinary. He's, you know, not a very tech guy. He either put it on airplane mode or he was in the shower.
Yeah.
Right. But he didn't call me back. And I'm like, something's off, you know? So I went to his place and I saw his car was there and he wasn't answering the phone. And I'm pounding on the door because the door was locked, yada, yada, yada. Long story short, the guy, the landlord who I know very well, super great guy, ends up getting in. And we found my dad, he had a stroke. And the stroke actually took his vision in an instant. He had a stroke in the back of his brain. I forget what they call it, but it's where your vision is and a lot of your memory, right? And yeah, he had the stroke, and there was a 3-day period before that I hadn't talked to him just because of whatever. Like, we didn't talk every day, you know? So somewhere in that 3-day period, he had the stroke and he went blind immediately and just went berserk in his apartment. Imagine if we're sitting here right now and boom, lights out. You'd go nuts. And he ended up wedging himself in this little back room and he couldn't figure out how to get out. And so he ended up, I found him, thank God. I mean, he was days away, hours away from dying. And I found him and called the paramedics, and he was in the hospital for a month, probably. My wife stayed by his side, and this is right during COVID. My wife stayed by his side, for 21 days, didn't leave.
And he's going to be celebrating 3 years from his stroke. And he's doing okay today?
Yeah, he moved in with me for a period of time, but he wore out his welcome.
Yeah.
Just typical stuff. He over the 3 years, he has his vision came back.
Amazing.
Not completely, but no color, right? His memory is halfway okay. But he did move in with us for 2.5 years. And then him and my wife, they just started getting into it. And real quick, funny story. My dad, when he was 17 years old, he hitchhiked from Ohio to Texas to go work on the oil rigs. And never had a problem with hitchhiking. In fact, back then, that's how, if you wanted to go somewhere, that's how you're getting around, right? I remember me and Ben were sitting there recording a podcast, and one of our therapists comes rushing in. And I'm like, what are you doing? We're recording. She's like, Amanda, my wife, Amanda just called. Your dad left the house. So I immediately pack up and I go home, and he's nowhere to be found. He just left. Him and my wife got into an argument. He got pissed off that she wouldn't give him chocolate. And so he turns into this grumpy guy, right? And he goes out and he hitchhikes. And some dude picked him up, took him to Brass Ring Pub. My dad sat there, had a Diet Coke. The guy had a beer. Cops are at my house. Helicopters in the air. I mean, it was berserk. It was nuts. I'm like, this is a little aggressive, And he ends up coming back. He comes back. This guy drops him off at the house, and he's like, he doesn't care. He's like, Tom, look, he's like, do with me with whatever you want, But imagine I got the 3 kids and everything. They're screaming.
It's a circus.
He just wore out. He didn't wear out his welcome. I would love to bring him back, but enough time had passed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I put him into in like an independent living home, But if we talk about full circle, he spent 26 years of my life raising me, doing all that stuff. And here I am getting to do that for him, Yeah. I go and visit him a couple times a week, fill his med case, talk with him, and it couldn't be any better.
You're the rock of the family today.
I like to think so, but it's a tall order, It's that in and of itself you have to balance.
But you don't have to do it, and you do it because you're of service to your family today.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is living amends.
Yeah. No other way to put it, and sometimes it's stressful. Sometimes it's hard. And that's the thing about this whole sobriety thing. Just because we get sober doesn't mean that life isn't going to happen. It's how we're going to handle it. Life is going to smack us in the face. Something else is going to come down the pipeline and smack me across the face. What am I going to do? How am I going to handle it? Am I going to run to Budweiser and Jim Beam, which is how I used to? Or am I going to man up and do what I'm supposed to do? Be of service. And, hopefully that's what I choose.
Do you want to give your podcast a shout out?
Yeah. So the podcast is, it's Real Recovery Talk. And I know you had Ben on. It's myself, Ben, Dr. Tambini. We've been doing the podcast now for going on 8 years. In October, it'll be 8 years, 500. And by that time, it'll be probably 600 episodes. I started that podcast in my closet, in my underwear, because I didn't know I had no idea I knew I wanted to start a podcast, but I didn't know how. And my buddy's like, dude, and he sent me the link to an ATR 2100 microphone. He's like, buy this, plug it into your computer, go into GarageBand and just hit record and start talking. And one night I'm like all pissed off at myself because I hadn't started this podcast yet. And the reason I'm in my underwear is because I was laying in bed getting ready to go to sleep. And I just grabbed my computer and I went into the closet because that's where, the clothes and it helps with the audio. Mm-hmm. And that's where I recorded the very first episode, October 2017. And ever since then, it's grown now to where it's myself, Ben, Dr. Tambini, full on studio interviews, but the premise behind the podcast in the very beginning, and Ben alluded to this, but I'll just reiterate it. A lot of times when people enter into a recovery program or a treatment program or just sobriety in general, we have a whole team of people that surround us. When I went into treatment, I had a therapist, I had a case manager, I had a driver, I had a nurse, I had a doctor, I had a yoga instructor, I had all this stuff. I had a chef. My dad, he's up in Pennsylvania. He ain't got shit. He just has nothing. So I'm like, well, this seems kind of weird that the family members have literally no access to anything. And that's what really prompted the podcast, was giving insight and shedding light onto what it is that we go through, but how we can help you navigate it. And I say it this way. I say, we're just going to help you navigate the ever-changing landscape of addiction. Not only for me, myself, your loved one, but you yourself. As a family member, like, you play a part in this, but let us kind of help you, walk you through that and what it looks like, So we release every Sunday, every Wednesday, every Friday. It's on YouTube, Real Recovery Talk, Apple, Spotify. We just started a family reconnect program. So it's like an online support group that, a lot of our listeners, it's a membership based, because it's myself, Ben, and Tambini. We would love to help everybody and give out as much free content as we can. There's nothing wrong asking for money in return at some point. We're 8 years into this. Yeah. So that's kind of what we're doing now.
Well, yeah. If you're working in isolated situations with people, obviously your bandwidth is there's only so much of it.
Yeah.
So, thank you for what you do.
I appreciate it.
And thank you for coming on, sharing your story. It's going to help a lot of people. And I appreciate it. And I look forward to coming on your podcast as well.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks again.
Thanks, Kevin.